Hello and welcome to Analyze That. Today I want to go over episode 6 of, you guessed it, King's Court. This episode is all about getting the guys to introduce the girls to some of their trusted friends and family members so they can get an idea of what they think of them, so they can get like a third party perspective and see if what they're seeing is actually what's happening. So they basically take the group to this beautiful vineyard as a setting for these meetups, these interviews. And first up we have Carlos, who has brought along his brother to meet some of his top connections. The first woman he introduces to his brother is Edelweiss. And I was kind of surprised by this because I would have assumed that he would bring Janae or Jennifer out first, but I guess he's saving the best for last. Anyway, the date goes as expected and Edelweiss basically bungles it because she goes on about how she tends to run at the first sign of trouble in relationships because of past trauma. And we all know that's not what a partner wants to hear from someone they're getting to know. And you can kind of see Carlos and his brother raising their eyebrows at this because while it is a valid boundary to have, it's kind of weird that she led with that, But then again, she may have been tipsy because she was sipping on something the whole time. And then we come to Sarah and Tyson's date. The scene shifts to their date with Tyson's best friend Trevor. Trevor's basically asking Sarah all these questions. He asks her, for instance, what her values are. And she answers that her values are loyalty and commitment, that's what she wants from a partner. And when Trevor asks her how she feels about the attention that Tyson gets from women, Sarah correctly answers that it really comes down to the guy. If the guy wants to turn up, then he can turn up, and there's nothing she can do about that. And overall, I really liked Tyson's best friend Trevor because he asked all the right questions, and he asked very revealing questions at that. Next up to be interviewed was Felicia. And the first thing he asked her was what she likes about Tyson. And she basically responded that she likes his body and the way he looks, which had Trevor side-eyeing her because basically these two are just physically attracted to each other. And that's it. They just want to bone. And that's the crux of their connection, if we're being honest. And Trevor clocked that immediately, and I'm so glad that he was able to let Tyson know that, hey, this is really what it boils down to with you two. But that comes later. Things take an interesting turn during Thaddeus's interview sessions. Basically, he brings Dr. Kalia up as the first person to meet his friends, and the conversation starts out nice and light. They're asking her what she does for a living. Dr. Kalia asks how they know Thaddeus, and everything goes well until it's Loranda's turn to speak, because she basically reveals that she's actually Thaddeus's ex-girlfriend. So she's not just his closest friend, but also his ex. And you can tell Dr. Kalia is a bit taken aback by this. And to her credit, it is kind of strange. For him to drop a bombshell like this on her without giving her a heads up or anything is weird as fuck to me. But she keeps it cool during the date because this is Dr. Kalia after all. And even when Thaddeus reveals that, he was actually engaged to Loranda at some point, and he considers her to be like a bonus mom for his kids, she still keeps it cool. Dr. Kalia keeps her cool. She's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, very interesting development right here, but not entirely surprising because Thaddeus is gonna Thaddeus. This is what he does. And another one of Thaddeus's dates that stood out to me was Demi, because it seemed like she kind of didn't know what to say or how to respond to a lot of these questions they were asking her, because honestly, she doesn't know Thaddeus that well. They haven't had a chance to connect. And I think the only reason Thaddeus brought her to this mixer to interview with his friends and family is because he just wants to show that he has a roster too, like Tyson does. I don't know. But Demi kept giving these non-committal answers to everything, which I just loved. Anyway, Ariel was definitely the best out of all the dates that he brought out. And you can tell she has a stronger connection with Thaddeus because she looks more secure overall. There is an understanding and a calmness about her due to the fact that they already have the solid foundation together as a couple. Or should I say potential couple. So yeah, her interview with Thaddeus's people went really smooth, and I think she passed with flying colors. And then comes my favorite couple, Janae and Carlos. One of the first things that Carlos's brother asks Janae is how she feels about being a stepmom, because Carlos does have all these kids, even a 5-year-old, and she admits that it's something that she's never considered or imagined before. But ultimately, she's here to support Carlos, and she would love his kids as much as he loves them, which I thought was a really good answer and an honest one at that. And then Carlos's brother, asks her about jealousy, and we know, she has a problem with this. And she admits that, yeah, she does get jealous. And in real life, she wouldn't be thrilled about the prospect of Carlos hanging out or talking to other women romantically, which again makes sense, but she understands it in this context. And right in that moment, while they're having this conversation, Jennifer comes up to interrupt their date and their conversation. And I thought that was so rude because I don't know how this process works, but up until this point, what I've seen happen is that the guy would go and get one of his connections and bring her to meet his friends or family members. So this is the first time that I'm seeing one of the ladies actually interrupt the conversation instead of just waiting her turn. And I don't know if production instigated this or not, but Jennifer seemed to be enjoying herself way too much. So I think she actually instigated it actually. And yeah, she just seems to enjoy pushing Janae's buttons generally, and then acting like Janae's the mean girl or that Janae's crazy when she's the one pushing her buttons. Like, yes, Janae's jealous and protective of what she has with Carlos, but Jennifer's being weird too. At least in this moment. I mean, I get interrupting them during a mix or at the house, but to do it in this setting, I don't know, that was just weird to me. Anyway, once Jennifer sits down, Carlos explains to his brother that she's the perfect match that the matchmaker picked for him, and Jennifer reveals that she feels as though Carlos is a little bit reserved right now, and that she's just waiting for an opportunity to get to know him more. And maybe her interjecting at this moment was her way of trying to make that opportunity happen. I don't know. And you know what? When I look at it from another perspective, maybe this is not a bad strategy after all, because if she does get sent home, at least she can say that she tried. And she basically lets Carlos know that she's willing to rise to the occasion, but she needs him to initiate as well. And I think this is how you do it. This is how you make use of a gap or an opportunity. And this is the type of initiative that someone like Lexi should have taken, for example, if she had the tools to. But yeah, I really do like her communication style in the end. And I think that Jennifer, if she had come along earlier in the process, like she may have had more of a chance with either Carlos or Tyson. But coming in this late in the game, she's playing on the back foot a little, but she is doing her best to catch up. Now, while Carlos is making the promise to give his connection with Jennifer a chance, Janae is like watching from the group bench, looking annoyed as fuck, which kind of reminds me of how Lexi used to look at her when she would interact with Carlos when she was still around. But anyway, I'll just leave it there. But it just, the contrast and the synchronicity of it is very interesting. Now after this, Jennifer also goes over to meet Tyson's friend Trevor. And basically she impresses him as well with her communication skills. And I must admit, she is a good communicator, honestly. There's something calming about how she presents herself. And you can tell she's very self-assured and confident in herself. She knows herself and she presents herself that way. And you know what? If I were Felicia, I would be worried at this point because the chemistry between Tyson and Jennifer is undeniable. And Tyson's really going for him. Tyson goes on and on about how much he likes her, and he even says that she makes his heart smile, And that's something he's never said about any connection before. And you can tell, he's falling for her at this point. And he even mentioned in his confessional that he knew from that first mixer that he and Jennifer would have a connection, and basically tells Carlos to stick with Janae. He's like, Carlos already has a Janae. He doesn't need any more Jays. And I thought that was so funny and so on brand for him. But it just shows how much he's fallen for Jennifer already. And at this point, I think I'm also becoming desensitized to his antics. I don't know, because, I kind of see the point he's making here. Anyway, Carlos has been very lucky, in this process, in that he's been able to attract two amazing women with Janae and Jennifer. So it'll be interesting to see who he picks and who he ends up with, but he has been very lucky. Tyson has a point with that. The most interesting part of this episode for me was hearing the feedback from the friends and family and their impressions of the ladies afterwards. For instance, I liked Trevor's observations the most because I think he was spot on about everything. He basically said that Allison is definitely wife material for Tyson, but the way they were sitting next to each other like schoolmates tells him that they don't have any physical chemistry, which he knows is important to Tyson. And he also points out that Tyson's connection with Felicia is clearly just purely sexual, no matter how much Tyson tries to deny it or paint it another way, which is also true, he gets it. Next up, we see Thaddeus's friends, who rightfully point out that there's really no depth with Demi, and with Denitra, there might be some issues with her wanting a child in the future. So, that's how they see those connections with Thaddeus. And when it comes to Dr. Kalia, they were very honest about the fact that it was very clear that she would not be okay with Thaddeus being friends with an ex. And that, things might be okay at first. That's basically what they say. It was like, things might be okay at first, but it would cause problems in the long run because it's clear that she's uncomfortable with his friendship with his ex. And they also reveal something interesting about Thaddeus during this wrap up, because they mention that he doesn't really do enough vetting in relationships most of the time. He tends to just jump in and fall in love quickly and wants to wrap everything a neat bow, which almost always leads to heartbreak. And I can see that about him because he has been rushing things throughout this process. He wants to speed run through everything. So, and I hope to God he works on this, because I'd hate to see him break Kalia's heart or even Ariel's heart, because I really like those ladies and they seem really invested in him, unfortunately. And that's just sad for them, but we'll see how it works out. Anyway, we move on to Carlos and his brother. They're wrapping up and they're reflecting on, their interactions with the ladies. And Charles basically encourages Carlos to explore his connection with Jennifer, because he thinks that his connection with Janae might just be in the honeymoon phase at the moment. Whereas with Jennifer, he sees something deeper, there could be more depth there if he's willing to explore it. And you can see the wheels turning in Carlos's mind, because he's really considering his words and taking what he's saying to heart. He even takes it a step further and asks if he sees any red flags in Janae. And, Carlos admits that she could work on her confidence. And by that, I think he means her sense of internal security, which, like I said in previous episodes, it's going to be hard to come by because Janae is anxiously attached, which means her sense of internal security can be easily threatened when she feels like her connection with her partner is under threat. But yeah, Carlos reiterates that he's very wary of hurting her feelings, and that's probably why he doesn't talk to other women in front of her. And that's obviously speaks to his character and maybe the fact that he's kind of fallen for her a bit at this point. So he looks like a man in two minds. He's considering both connections, but it's tough. It's really tough at this point. And later on at the house, they have a talent show where everyone shares their talents, and it's just this really cute, heartwarming moment. Edelweiss does a flamenco number, Demi does poetry, Ariel and Demetra do a bodybuilding contest, and of course they're both Thaddeus' girls. And you can tell he's so proud because he was looking like a kid in a candy store. And of course, the Queen Allison did an opera number because she is a professional opera singer after all. And a bunch of the other women were her backup dancers, and it just looks like so much fun, and it was so cute. I loved it. It was a nice bit of comic relief from all the drama that's constantly happening around the house and in the show overall, that's for sure. Now, the morning after, Sarah and Janae are having this conversation about how some of the girls will be nice to your face, but then turn around and swoop in and take your man. And Janae goes on to say that she doesn't like women who are nice to your face but snakes behind your back, and she feels like Jennifer is that type of person, and that's why she doesn't fuck with her. And you know what's interesting? Right as they're having this conversation, Jennifer walks up to Carlos while he's making waffles and offers to help him, which then gives them an opportunity to start a conversation and actually get to know each other. So it's almost what's happening, the parallels of the conversation and what's happening is insane to me. So anyway, Carlos reflects later that although Jennifer seems very hippy-dippy and chill when you first meet her, she actually has a lot of depth, and he feels like they have more of a cerebral connection. And this got me thinking that this really might change the game here, because that's something I don't think he has with Janae. Him and Janae have chemistry for sure, but they don't have the same type of deep conversations that he has with Jennifer. And that's something that's super important in relationships, especially as you get older. And it's looking like the matchmaker did her job here, because the more time Carlos spends with Jennifer, the more he realizes things about her that he likes that he's missing from Janae. He even admits that now that he's 42, he doesn't lust anymore. So if there's no real connection with someone, then he can't be with them. So yeah, it looks like things are about to get really messy and interesting with this throuple, and I'm here for it. From here, the scene shifts to Dr. Kalia and Thaddeus. They're enjoying this workout session, and in her confessional, Dr. Kalia reveals that She feels as though Thaddeus is everything she's ever envisioned in a man, and that part of the reason she was so nervous during her meeting with his friends is because she's so protective of the connection she has with him. And this to me just sounded like self-sabotage, because you know that thing that happens sometimes when we get something that we've been wanting for a long time, and a part of us just thinks that it's too good to be true, and so we do something to sabotage it. I feel like that's what's happening with Dr. Kalia right now. She's holding too tight to this connection, and as a result, she's kind of stifling Thaddeus and putting too much pressure on their connection, to the point where she's kind of pushing it away. She even made the mistake of telling Thaddeus to his face that he sees him as her husband. Like, girl, hold your horses. And Thaddeus is obviously visibly taken aback by this confession, and you can tell he immediately wants to take a step back because they haven't known each other that long. But interestingly enough, also, Thaddeus admits in his confessional that Dr. Kalia mirrors him in a lot of ways because he tends to move fast in relationships. So now it seems like he's found his match in someone that moves even faster than him. So that's interesting how people tend to attract into their lives people that mirror back to them aspects of themselves that are unhealed or that need to be seen, you know? Because I think that's what's happening here. But yeah, Kalia takes it even a step further by saying that she needs Thaddeus to step up and be decisive because she's not gonna, wait around. Which basically means she's expecting him to choose her and wrap this whole thing up, which, fair point. So we'll see what Thaddeus does with that information, or how he feels about it and what he decides, but it will definitely, I think, affect his decision and his actions moving forward, or I hope it does. Anyway, the scene shifts from here to the elimination dinner, and on the chopping block this week, we have these lovely ladies on the screen. Some expectedly so, others not so much. Dr. Kalia was obviously pissed and hurt at being placed on the bottom because, like, what the fuck, this is her future husband in her mind, and she expected Thaddeus to protect her and cover her, not put her in a vulnerable position like this. At least that's what she said in the confessional, because again, she already sees her in that, like, future husband role. And what makes it worse is that this turns out to be one of Thaddeus's tests. He's basically testing her. That's what he says in his confessionals. And as we've established, he likes to test the women in his life, like that's one of his toxic traits. And he basically reveals that he placed Kalia on the bottom to test her. He wants to see how she responds when placed in an uncomfortable situation. And this was so telling for me, because to me, it's an example of a man trying to humble a woman that he feels unworthy of. Because when you hear Thaddeus talk about Kalia in his confessionals, you get the sense that a part of him feels intimidated by her status and all her qualifications. And so I think a part of him wants to humble her. Because again, as we've established in previous episode breakdowns, Thaddeus has a kink for testing and humbling confident women. He likes going after them. He likes going after these strong-willed and assertive women, not because he genuinely likes them, but because he wants to humble them and take away that thing that makes them who they are and keeps it for themselves. Like, that's pretty much his MO, whether he's aware of it or not. And it's also interesting to me how, in his confessional, he says that it's okay for Dr. Kalia to get ratchet every now and then. He's okay with that. Which to me implies that he wants to see her basically act ratchet so he can do the same thing he did with Ariel, which is to swoop in and chastise her for acting ratchet so he can feel superior to her. So basically, Thaddeus' strategy here, which I think comes from his inferiority complex, because I think he has an inferiority complex when it comes to these women, and that's why he's so hell-bent on humbling them. He puts them in these situations and puts them through these tests so that he can get a reaction from them and call them ratchet, which then puts him in a superior position, which is just sick, twisted, and really disheartening to see. And I feel for the women, concerned and connected with this, because they think that he genuinely likes them, but in fact, I think he just wants to humiliate them and serve his own ego. Anyway, Thaddeus continues to try his best to get a reaction out of Dr. Kalia, even bringing up his relationship with his ex and asking how she feels about it, knowing damn well how she feels about it. And Kalia responds calmly that she accepts it because as a single mom, she understands the importance of village. Thaddeus responds that he needs her to be exactly who she is and not who she's programmed herself to be. And I'm like, but sir, that is who she is. Who she programmed herself to be is who she is. That is the self she is choosing to be. Anyway, Kalia basically lets him know that if he's expecting another shoe to drop for whatever reason, then he can keep waiting because what he sees is what he gets with her, and she's not hiding anything or trying to be anything or anyone that she isn't. And she even adds that maybe his lack of confidence in their connection is God's way of showing her that maybe she needs to give the other guys a chance. How about that? And you can tell Thaddeus is like visibly shocked at this. Like he didn't expect her to go that way at all. He expected her to play into his game. You know, he expected to play her like he played Ariel last week. But nah, Kalia knows her worth. She knows herself too well. And she's too confident in herself to do that. So yeah, I just loved her response here. And I love how she prioritized her dignity, her integrity, and her safety. Like, yeah, that's how you do it. Anyway, Denitra is the first to go, followed slowly or swiftly by Demi, and both options make sense to me because we're getting close to the finish line here, so we need to trim the bushes, you know, we need to get to that final 3 or 2 at this point. And both ladies exit gracefully because they also understand what's going on. Afterward, Kalia is honest about the fact that she feels hurt about being placed on the bottom. Like she and Thaddeus have a sit down, and she keeps it very calm still. She keeps it collected throughout the dinner. But in her confessional, she admits that internally she feels as if Thaddeus wants to see more of her emotions and that she's willing to bring it. And I feel like this could be the beginning of the end for them and for her, because he's basically putting her in a position where he is intentionally dysregulating her nervous system in order to elicit a response, which is a huge red flag to me. Because ideally in a relationship, you should be able to feel so secure that your nervous system doesn't get activated in that way, you know, because you feel so genuinely secure and held. And another thing I've noticed as part of Thaddeus' tendency to rush things is that it shows up in the way he insists on wanting to see all aspects of the women in a matter of weeks, which is insane to me. Like, there's no way you can see all seasons of a person in a matter of weeks. And to create contrived situations of stress and strife in order to bring out aspects of that person's, you know, personality artificially is really toxic to me. And we see this toxic behavior coming to a head in the highlight for next week's episode, okay? Because this is where he and Dr. Kalia have this big sit down to really unpack some of this crazy behavior, because that's what it is. This man is acting crazy at this point. So yeah, we'll see what Thaddeus thinks and how he reacts when Kalia finally gives him the reaction that he wants, which I'm kind of sad to see, because I would have liked her to stay, to like keep herself calm and not give him what he wants. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please remember to click the like button, subscribe, and comment down below. See you on the next one.